page 92. As much nonsense, despondency, pusillanimousness, and life incorrectness it contained, as rich it was with disappointments, privations, and sorrow. Only strong, broad-minded, and courageous thinking leads the life upwards, whereas weak, narrow-minded, and faint-hearted thinking oppresses, breaks, and finally destroys everything. Thus, fundamentally, every single human being, indeed even every family and every nation, has to live exactly the destiny and the life which, in thoughts, they have prepared for themselves. Pity would be fully out of place, because every single human being, each family and each nation could help themselves, if they would only want to. How appropriately the ancient words of wisdom fit in. Quote, "The smith of the destiny is the human being, himself or herself." Only that human being who is carried upwards by the tremendous momentum of his or her mighty thoughts is not left behind, halfway through life. But whosoever, on the other hand, rather prefers to be concerned with depressing and pusillanimous thoughts, to brood over experienced defeats and disappointments, and cannot free themselves from them, will, even with all efforts, attain no or only limited success. Out of the narrowness of egotistical thinking, pusillanimous views, and self-serving evaluations, no viable philosophy and therefore no positive life direction and life formation can result from it. Whoever cannot free themselves from the thoughts of a suffered disastrous thing, a defeat or a failure, will have this disastrous thing, defeats and failures befalling anew and always again and again. Whoever is continuously afraid of evil, mischance, and other terrible things, literally conjures them up until they strike and destroy him or her. With worries, only new worries are bred, and whoever sees only grievances and the dark side of their surroundings, they themselves will be caught in grievances and on the dark side of life. With irresistible magical Gewalt, the thought attracts that on which it is directed. As soon as someone negatively thinks about an abyss, he or she plunges down from dizzying heights, is smashed and crushed and falls prey to the sucking power of the bottomless depths, which in reality is only the reflection of his or her own thoughts. Only a consciousness-possessing individual is able to comprehend, to recognize, or to feel a consciousness-based vertigo feeling, because only such an individual is capable of thinking. Thus, any latent danger can become acutely ausarten only to a consciousness-possessing individual. This, however, the instant the thought is concerning itself with this danger. Namely, at exactly this instant, the decision is made as to whether or not it will be overcome. A child, not yet conscious of any danger and its consciousness-based outcoming effect, overcomes an appearing danger with playful certainty, whereas a pessimist, on the contrary, out of sheer and naked anxiety and worry, all but, or often even abruptly, loses any resistance power and falls prey to the danger. His or her anxiety, or his or her pessimism, literally summons the terrible thing and the danger. Here also an old proverb can be introduced. Quote, "Only the human being who disdains death escapes it, but it catches up with the faint-hearted." A fearful human being and failure will never master the life, because anxiety, pusillanimousness, despondency, consciousness-based unconcernedness, and inactivity, in the long run, destroy with absolute and horrible Gewalt every inner security and every will for the positive life. The inner security is the basic prerequisite for a good formation and utilization of the consciousness and of the life. Fear of life, depression, life uncertainty, and many other things with the same characteristics are the consequences of a lost life and consciousness orientation. When the consciousness-based life of the human being is no longer aligned with a distinct guideline, he or she loses the foundation of their consciousness existence. No personality and no character grow by themselves. They are formed, grow, and unfold themselves according to quite distinct leading thoughts. To possess a character means nothing other than to live exactly according to the consciousness-based guideline, its evolution and advancement, to hold fast to it, and to advocate for it. Depending on the consciousness standing and its evolution, the character of the individual human being is shaped. Thus it lies in the power and in the choosing of each individual human being themselves as to how their character is generated, or ausartet. Ausartet means very badly getting out of control of the good human nature. As long as the human being still possesses this enormous gift, to that extent he or she is also still able to represent their own firm point of view in the world or in their surroundings. Only in this way can he or she form a clear world view and be a real human being. What the human being loves, into that he or she will be changed. When an idea seizes possession of a human being, then his or her entire inner nature and his or her life changes, a result of the consciousness-based influence. Personalities and characters, creative achievements, consciousness-based disinterest, pessimism, and the terrible things resulting from them only portray the forms of effects and manifestations of the leading human thought world. Consequently, they must be controlled at all times and continually through intensive perpetual training, held at the state of the highest possible and constantly expanding consciousness cognition. But this is only possible through the willingness to burst from the shackles of the norm, to break loose from the narrowness of the individual self, and to rise into the expanse of the cognition. A tremendous task, which actually is not only an urgent matter for every individual human being, but which applies to the whole of humankind. Certainly, in the eyes of the so-called normal human being, a thinker is regarded as a starry-eyed idealist, as unworldly, and out of touch with reality. But is this really so? Is it but not more likely that especially these thinkers are real human beings, because they have thoughts about the life and the consciousness-based and spiritual standing of the human being, from what results that their cognitions are so tremendously far-reaching and appear so incomprehensible that they can neither be grasped nor understood by the normal, average human being. Consequently, the speech of a thinker is incomprehensible for many, especially when he or she speaks about spirit powers and consciousness powers, which are able to form every human being. The fact of this unintellect is also then that it lets the ignorant doubt and labels the one rich in cognitions as a dreamer, false prophet, know-it-all, and crackpot. Solely for this reason, it is also possible that uncountable human beings have lost their life direction, their will to fight for the existence, and the entire purpose in life. These ignorant ones rather believe in any religions, formula, cults, magic spells, and other delusional or irrational beliefs, whereby they inevitably fall prey to a catastrophic irrational teaching, through which they plunge into the deepest abyss of the self-destruction. With brutal Gewalt, their own psyche is thus demolished, trampled underfoot, and driven to self-destruction. Every life direction vanishes, and every purpose in life becomes destroyed. Likewise, the consciousness-based activity dwindles, and makes room for a destructive consciousness emptiness, unconcernedness, and deterioration. All interests simply dissolve themselves into nothing, and the entire life is hollow and empty. Then it comes so far that the physician or psychiatrist must step into action, however, unsuccessfully, as is most often the case. So everything becomes even much worse. Illnesses of all kinds take possession of the human being, who has thus destroyed himself or herself. Horrible depressions, nervous breakdowns, organ cramping, heart cramps, convulsions, and psychic and moral destruction drive him or her to insanity and to suicide, in which case he or she does not consider that everything is only their own fault, because they have failed themselves, failed in their own consciousness, in their own security, and in their own self-confidence, ability, and volition. From the illnesses, suggestively and forcefully brought about through the consciousness-based disinterest, which extend themselves frighteningly fast and strongly over the entire nervous system, soon result many other psychosomatic and physical illnesses, which are often connected with great pain. So it is absolutely possible thereby that a human being can dig his or her own premature grave, because he or she prematurely prepares an inglorious end to their life. This in unknowledge of the fact that even the deepest psychic defeat signifies an absolute ridiculousness in contrast to the unmeasurable greatness of the human spirit and consciousness. No thinking human being could psychically fall so low that he or she could no longer be helped, that he or she could not again lead a normal, healthy, cheerful, and happy life. In order to do this, it only requires the necessary cognition, the certainty, and the knowledge that it is truly so. And towards this cognition, for this certainty and the knowledge, it only requires a quote, Stein des Anstoßes, or to get the stone rolling. After that, any human being is able to heal himself or herself, indeed, with absolute knowledge. They even heal themselves and form their life completely anew and better than before, because now they know with absolute certainty that they determine their life, their path in life, their whole character, every low and high, and their entire destiny themselves. And this cognition is of lasting value. To this, Tolstoy said, quote, "The human being lives from the spirit, and not from the body. When he or she knows that, and their life lies not in the body but in the spirit, then you can lock them behind iron bars in chains, yet they will always be free." No human being is compelled to believe the explanations of this writing. They may be accepted or dismissed, quite how one always wishes. Of the negating ones, in spite of their critical, repudiating mentality, the thorn of stimulation and the germinating cognition will pierce into their thought world, through which, wanted or unwanted, they nevertheless become stimulated by the sense of the content of the writing. The affirmative one will achieve consolation, healing, and power, become a human being, and learn to understand the spirit and the consciousness, as well as life. But the teaching should not only bring healing of uncountable disastrous things, but also life success and cognitions. Thereby no claim is raised that everything which one can know about the truth will be said. Only a few things have been set down about the truth, which have been learned and taught over a time span of millions of years, up to the present life. Without ill will towards anyone, this writing is determined for all those who need it, and who are able to gain power and cognitions from it. It is determined for the suffering humankind, which live in unknowledge as to why they live.